The Honorable Prime Minister Mohammad Shahbaz Sharif and Deputy Prime Minister, Foreign Minister Senator Mohammad Ishaq Dar have held numerous telephone conversations with their counterparts across the region and the wider world. Additionally, the foreign ministers of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt met in Islamabad, which our media colleagues extensively covered, and we issued press releases throughout the event. First of all, let me begin with this four-party meetings, consultations. This was the second of the series, second meeting of the consultations among the foreign ministers of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt. You would recall that the first meeting was held in Riyadh on the 19th of March. Before formal talks in the group format, the visiting foreign ministers held bilateral meetings with the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Pakistan, and I'm sure you covered our press releases that we issued on this meeting outlining the basic themes that were discussed. The three foreign ministers also called on the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Mohammad Shahbaz Sharif. The Prime Minister's office also released media readouts on these meetings, which were extensively covered. The foreign ministers of the four foreign ministers' important consultations in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs covered a range of issues, including reviewing prevailing situation in the Middle East and the Gulf, efforts to de-escalate violence and hostilities, and promote peace and diplomacy in the region. Pakistan highly values its relations with the brotherly countries of Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt. These interactions provided an opportunity to further strengthen Pakistan's cooperation and coordination with these two countries across multifaceted areas of mutual interest. The formal consultations and talks of the foreign ministers, four foreign ministers, held in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs lasted 15 minutes longer than the originally scheduled time. So at the end of these talks, you would recall that our Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister delivered a media statement which included a host summary about these four-party consultations. The host summary by the DPM had following key points just to sort of rehash. One, the discussion focused on possible ways to bring an early and permanent end to the war in the region. Two, concerns were expressed that the ongoing conflict is extremely unfortunate for its devastating impact on lives and livelihoods across the wider region and beyond. Three, the unity of Muslim Ummah in these challenging times is of utmost importance. Four, the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Pakistan briefed the visiting Foreign Minister on prospects of potential US-Iran talks, US-Iran talks in Islamabad. The visiting Foreign Ministers expressed full support, their fullest support to this initiative. Five, the Foreign Minister reaffirmed the unity to contain the situation, reduce the risk of military escalations, and create conditions and structures negotiations between relevant parties. Six, the foreign ministers advocated dialogue, diplomacy as the only viable pathway to prevent conflicts and promote harmony. They called for upholding the United Nations Charter, the principles of the Charter, particularly respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. And finally, the foreign ministers also discussed ways and means to further strengthen mutual cooperation among the four brotherly countries. Another very important development of this week was the visit of the Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, Senator Mohammad Ishaq Dar, to China, undertaken at the invitation of the Foreign Minister of China, Mr. Wang Yi. The visit provided an opportunity for both sides to hold in-depth discussions on regional issues as well as bilateral and global matters of mutual concern. The Deputy Prime Minister's visit to China, despite medical advice to rest, was evidence of the importance that we placed on this relationship with China. The other issues that came up for discussion was Afghanistan. A milestone achieved during the visit was a five-point peace plan initiative of China and Pakistan for restoring peace and stability in the region. These 5 points, very briefly, I'm sure you read our readout on this, included immediate cessation of hostilities, call on and utmost care efforts not to prevent the spread of this conflict, and humanitarian assistance must be allowed to the affected areas. Number 2, start of peace talks as soon as possible, strengthening sovereignty, territorial integrity of the relevant countries. Dialogue and diplomacy was the only viable pathway forward, committing to peaceful resolution of disputes and refraining from the use of force or the threat of use of force. Number 3, security of non-military targets must be ensured. The principles of protecting civilians in the military conflict should be observed, and upholding of full adherence to international humanitarian law. And finally, the primacy of the UN Charter was reaffirmed. The security of the shipping lanes was also mentioned in these 5 points, including safety of passage of crew members and stranded in the Strait of Hormuz, allow the safe passage of civilians and commercial ships, and restore normal passage through the straits as soon as possible. So this was, ladies and gentlemen, in the gist of the 5 points peace 5 points peace initiative by Pakistan and China. And moving on to some of the other aspects, which includes the roundup of the important telephone conversations that was held between Prime Minister and his counterparts and the Deputy Prime Minister with his counterparts. So on 27th March, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Honorable Prime Minister Muhammad Shahbaz Sharif, received a telephone call from His Highness Sheikh Sabah Al Khalid Al Hamad Al Sabah, the Crown Prince of the State of Kuwait, expressing a strong condemnation of attacks against Kuwait. The Prime Minister also apprised the Kuwaiti leadership of Pakistan's sincere diplomatic efforts to bring an end to the war in the Middle East. While expressing deep appreciation of the Prime Minister's leadership, the Crown Prince of Kuwait fully endorsed Pakistan's efforts for mediation between Iran and the US. He also thanked the Prime Minister for Pakistan's support to Kuwait in the current crisis. The next day, the Prime Minister held an important telephone conversation with His Excellency Dr. Masood Pezeshkian, the President of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Our Prime Minister briefed the Iranian President on the strong endorsement of Pakistan's peace initiative and expressed the hope that the viable path towards ending hostility could be found collectively. While appreciating Prime Minister's sincere diplomatic efforts, the Iranian President shared his perspective on the ongoing hostilities perpetrated particularly by Israel against Iran. He stressed upon the need to build trust in order to facilitate talks and mediation, and in this regard he acknowledged the Prime Minister's Pakistan's supportive role for peace. On 31st March, the Prime Minister received a telephone call from His Excellency Antonio Costa, the President of the European Council. The two sides exchanged views on ongoing hostilities in the Middle East. They also discussed strengthening Pakistan-EU relations, including the importance of GSP Plus and upcoming Pakistan-EU Business Forum in Islamabad, scheduled end of this month. The Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Senator Muhammad Ishaq Dar, also held important telephone calls during this week. Very briefly, let me list those. On 27th March, he held the telephone conversation with the Foreign Minister of China and the member of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee, Mr. Wang Yi. The two leaders exchanged views on the evolving regional situation. The Chinese side expressed their deep appreciation for Pakistan's constructive role in promoting de-escalation and conveyed China's support in this regard. Both leaders reaffirmed that Pakistan and China are strategic cooperative partners bound by mutual trust. They agreed to continue working closely to promote peace and stability in the region and beyond. And 3 to 4 days later to this telephone call, the visit of the Deputy Prime Minister to China took place. The second important telephone conversation was the DPM held on the same day with the Foreign Minister of Egypt, Dr. Badr Abdul Ateh. He also spoke on the same day with the Foreign Minister of Turkey, and he also spoke with the Foreign Minister of Turkey on 27th March and then on 31st March. On 28th March, the DPM held a telephone conversation with the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres. They exchanged views on the evolving situation in West Asia and its implication for international peace and security. The DPM underscored that the United Nations remains indispensable to conflict prevention and resolution, and reaffirmed Pakistan's unwavering commitment to diplomacy and dialogue as the only viable pathway towards sustainable peace. Secretary General Guterres expressed appreciation and extended full support for Pakistan's ongoing diplomatic efforts in pursuit of peace and stability in the region. On 28th March, the DPM spoke with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Qatar, His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Jassim Al Thani, and the same day he held a telephone conversation with the Foreign Minister of Indonesia, Mr. Sugiarno. On 29th March, he spoke with the Foreign Minister of Iran, His Excellency Abbas Araghchi. The two leaders discussed the evolving regional situation and ongoing developments. DPM emphasized the need for de-escalation, stressing that dialogue and diplomacy remains the only viable path towards lasting peace. This conversation took place on the eve of the four-party talks in Islamabad, the group of 4 foreign ministers.